Hey guys, welcome back to Trekyards. As always, I'm Captain Foley.
And I'm Commander Cockings, and not as always.
I am Michael J. Crawford, the anti-Trekker.
But today we're going to specifically talk about the Borg Queen, or as Anti-Trekker likes to call her, the Borg. And we're going to talk about her character and how she kind of...
Well, is she good or bad? That's the summary.
I think she's bad. She's like a weak spot. She's a linchpin in the Borg collective that if you take it out, they're basically screwed. So, but anyway, I want to hear Anti-Trekker's thoughts.
Yeah, and I want to finish out of the round of us three because we talked about this vaguely with Law Reloaded on a previous debate, so I have a pretty keen idea of what I'm going to say. But yeah, Anti-Trekker, your thoughts on the Borg Queen? Is she good or bad as a part of the Borg lore?
Right, as a part of the Borg lore, she is an insult to the Borg lore. She is a steaming pile of dog crap left on the front lawn that is the Borg collective. The Borg Queen was the single biggest mistake of Star Trek First Contact, and Star Trek First Contact has a lot of mistakes to pick apart. The Borg Queen was the absolute worst element of the Borg and Voyager, and the Borg and Voyager has a lot of flaws that you can pick apart. The Borg Queen ruins the concept of the Borg from top to bottom. It literally turns the Borg from an incredibly scary, potent, collective consciousness to they're a bunch of zombies doing her will. And I know that people argue about the relationship of the Queen with the collective. However, and I know that Commander, you are very much into canon, so let's talk canon for a minute.
I think Stuart is too.
In Endgame, she talks to the collective.
And I can counter that as well. Don't worry.
They are two distinct consciousnesses,
sort of,
and she is
maybe
in control
not.
of. She is in absolute control of the other one.
Maybe
she
not.
She gives orders throughout Voyager to the collective, where she's like, "Oh, I've disengaged you from the collective. Oh, I want you to do that. Oh, I want you this ship to self-destruct." She is the witch that is in control of a horde of zombies, and I hate that. Because the Borg as a collective consciousness, as Troy herself said in Q Who, means that they are almost infallible because they have the thinking power of an entire species in one mind. Now you have a petty in control of an endless supply of zombies, and that's what they turned it into. And not only, and I'll stop my tirade in just a second, I promise. But Captain Foley, you said just a moment ago that they're pretty much screwed without her. No, they went so far as to say.
No, I said they're screwed with her.
No, well, I thought you said if you take her out,
yeah,
she's the linchpin. If you take her out, then they're screwed. Yeah. But here's the thing. It's more than that. You kill her and they all just die. That's what happens in First Contact. You kill the Queen, they all freaking die. And then we saw it again in Endgame. So
just the localized ones that rely on that Queen, because aren't there multiple Queens?
Right. So I think in a nutshell, I could say that, no, I don't appreciate her very much.
It's obvious, yeah. See, I agree. And the thing with First Contact is, yes, you take the Queen out there and the Borg are screwed. All the localized Borg that have traveled back in time that are within transport or connection distance to the Queen are screwed. But I think it was established in Voyager at some point that there are other Queens that step up to the role should one be destroyed. And
I would love to see that establishment because I have not seen it. And if you can, I'm willing to be corrected. If you can show it to me, I'll accept it.
So I see that adding the Queen to the Borg was a mistake in my opinion because, like I said earlier in the other discussion, when we first met the Borg, they were absolutely terrifying because you could take out a whole ship and there's still other ships that are coming. There's no way to stop them. But if there's a centralized hub, a centralized mind behind their activities, you take that out and they're essentially lost. So it was a mistake to introduce the Queen in my opinion. However, I see what they were going with as opposed to a horde of zombies. It's more like a beehive, and because it's a colony, it's a collective, the Queen issues orders, and I see the parallels they were drawing with that, but that's not how the Borg were initially intended.
Right. Let me ask you, so would you agree with this assessment that they took something that was one of the most original and unique ideas in sci-fi and turned it into a trope that we've seen a million times before with the insect colony?
Yes. Yeah. I would agree with that. Because I thought they were more terrifying before the Queen was introduced. Yes.
Okay, so the Borg Queen as an entity. So you've got to think, what is she, it really? And I think people don't really break it down far enough. The Borg Queen is an AI construct that represent the Borg. She's not a person, she's not a personality, she's a representation of a program, just like the Borg are in as part of big computer mainframe-ness. She is a computer program, she's artificial. The fact that there are multiple Borg Queens, she gets blown up and killed in one movie, she comes back in another movie, she gets blown up in another part, I believe it's 3 times, and it's the same. Yes, it's slightly different personality traits, but that's just because whatever. It's just they turn on another version of this AI that can utilize the thing. So she's not a person. It's a representation of the voice of the collective, which we see here and everything. There's still a voice, there's still a thing, and she's part of that. It's part of that. So, you know, the Borg are this big wide thing, but we can't possibly understand or contemplate the scope. There's trillions of drones, which are all connected to individual ships, which are connected to quadrants, connected to the bigger, wider scope. That is more complicated than even the amounts of routes on our planet, the pure amount of things. So there is no possible way information can translate, can move. There's not anything fast enough to utilize that, especially when you've got space and distance. So the Borg Queen is a larger control point within that network. She represents a way of being able to keep a certain unit together. It's like a router, it's like a central processor, but it's just part of the bigger whole. So if you look at the Borg collective, okay, there's the one Queen in the Matrix 001. That's, primary Borg headquarters. But you've got a Borg Queen, theoretically somewhere else doing another thing, because it's just a control unit of that subsect. Hence why you hear the voice. That's just the wider scope of the collective, because again, there's also going to be lag between different parts. That's why the whole adapting to things. Well, you can't assume that information will disseminate across trillions and trillions of individual Borg drones. You can imagine that they can't keep the firmware up to date between trillions and trillions of Borg, especially when you've got to remember that they are assimilating creatures, ships on a daily, hourly basis across the entire network. So new information is coming in every single second. New people, new thoughts, new information adding to the whole across millions of cubes, millions of new drones. It's expanding. So therefore you can't possibly update everything all the time. It's a big flawed system of latency and waiting, and a cube that was doing assimilation sector 866 might be a cube that is 6 firmware updates behind, because it's it's assimilated species, and in the other side of the quadrant we've got something that's assimilated something better. Well, they can't just update a billion. You know what I mean? There's a finite especially when you've got physical construction of a ship. You got cubes that are older that'll be less advanced because you just can't update them in the same way. And so the Queen is an interesting sub-control unit. It's allowing all these Borg drones to connect to this higher hub, which is in itself an AI. It's like an AI controlling, but part of the whole. It's just a way of organizing and routing. And so then the Borg Queen, they understand that they're going back in time. There has to be a control unit to keep the Borg together. But they're all talking through the same voice of the Borg's objective. And Voyager, they're dealing with the Borg primary, unit in the primary unit location. And obviously you've got the whole evolution of Hugh and the personality coming to the collective. So I'm sure that changes them slightly, and we see their patterns and tactics change over the years. That probably all comes in because again they're evolving all the time with all these assimilated people. At some point they might assimilate a species that is so mentally powerful that can do something and something, change them something and something. But there must be a reason why the Borg have this AI construct in a specific body that can be deconstructed and moved, and it's a very specific thing. It's not a creature, it's a Borg. When her skin boils away, it's a full metal brain. She wasn't an alien. She's a construct. A Borg construct. There's nothing... She wasn't a race, she wasn't a whatever. She might have been based on a race because that was a race that happened to be able to deal with all of the data, whatever.
That being said, Memory Alpha says she was assimilated from species 125.
But that was the basic of the anatomy. That was the basic of the template. I mean, they can build another body of another freak. They did it, obviously. They didn't have...
True.
They didn't assimilate 19 identical women, cut them up into different pieces, and then make them. The fact that she is multiple times, multiple places as different people means she's not an actual person. She's a clone or a custom build or whatever.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit as far as the basic points you made. Number one, the Borg Queen is not a person. She's an AI that represents the collective itself. The only problem with that assessment is that it's dead wrong.
That's a pretty bad part of the that's a pretty bad
that's a big problem with it. Here's the thing: is that if the Borg Queen was simply an AI that
I didn't say simply.
Well, I no, but
artificial intelligence isn't simple by its very nature.
She is not a person. She is an AI, basically
she's a computer.
Program.
Yeah.
Yes.
As much as the doctor's a program as well.
She is the most emotional and petty computer program ever made, that holds personal vendettas, that is jealous, that is inherent, throws temper tantrums regularly. She also apparently suffers from multiple personality disorder because she talks to herself, and she, of course, contradicts herself on a regular basis. Now, you as a supporting argument, you mentioned that there are multiple Borg queens, and you mentioned the fact that we know of at least 3 that were destroyed. One that in the first Borg cube invasion, one in First Contact, and one in Endgame, I presume, are the 3 you're talking about. Because even though
the best of both worlds, yeah, you're right. Yeah, they are 3. Yeah.
She was retconned in, but yes, theoretically she was on that Borg cube. Mm-hmm. So there's number 1, number 2 would be.
They didn't say she was on the cube. She could have been anywhere in the collective.
No, they did say.
Yeah, Picard said she was there
with him. Yeah.
In his head, I never got the impression she was physically there.
Oh, I got the impression she was.
I did. No. I did as well. In fact, I got the feeling that what we saw in the opening shot of First Contact was a direct memory of his time as Locutus. That was a flashback, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think her whispering in his ear was in his head. I don't think she was physically there.
Well, keep in mind. Oh, and that's another
a representation of what happened.
Show me a computer program, because I got a million computer programs running in front of me right now, and none of them are horny.
If I made one,
but do any of them control 400 trillion million billion individual life forms that are assimilating another trillion billion life forms while controlling?
Might be having sex at the time they get assimilated. You never know.
That's very true. We've seen robot chicken where they drink booze and they become. If you assimilate a party animal, you can be a party animal.
Now here's a flip side to the next point you made, is that you couldn't. You were talking about the firmware update concept, which, by the way, I like the way you phrased that. I like the idea of putting it out like a firmware update, like a cell phone company would, or something like that, and that you couldn't possibly update all the Borg because of the sheer scope. Right, but if you look at the sheer scope of the collective, the fact that the collective multitasks at such a ridiculous level that the firmware updates couldn't possibly come out. However, your previous argument, and even what you just countered me with, was about how ridiculously advanced the Borg AI system is, which means that why couldn't they? Why couldn't they instantaneously update everything if they can create a petty, horny AI to run the whole thing?
Because one involves cloning and creation of a body. One involves billions and trillions and gillions and simillions. I mean, they're not the same equation.
You're just throwing an arbitrary limitation on it, as if there's some reason that the Borg couldn't update 1 trillion as easily as we can update 1,000. There's nothing out there that says they can't do it.
But there's more proof that they don't, because we can shoot them with phasers often. Right. I mean, there's more evidence to say that you would assume that after the first Borg encounter, you wouldn't just ignore Voyager. You would actually attack them every single time. There's the fact
the Borg are inherently stupid, apparently, in the Voyager era too. So that goes back to the emotional pettiness of the Queen, and the fact that she is fallible, and that is her worst aspect, is that she is not smart, and she is incredibly fallible. And if she was the representative of trillions of brains combined, as they said in Q Who, making them virtually, why is she such a dumbass that's more interested in getting laid with Data than her ultimate objective of whatever the hell her ultimate objective was, because that was conflicting information in and of itself.
Well, I mean, that was just manipulation to get information. I mean, they tried the hard strategy of getting it from his Data core.
Now we talk about the range of we talk about the range of the connection with the collective. Here's another basic problem with that, is that what is the range of the collective? Is it across the galaxy? Because apparently they can connect across the galaxy in episodes like Unimatrix 01 and Endgame. However, they also seem to have certain limitations. The only time that we've clearly seen Borg out of range of the collective is in the 21st century Earth, and in fluidic space. I would dare say this is that, okay, the reason that there was no communication in 21st century and 22nd century Earth was because the collective simply hadn't extended their Wi-Fi in that direction at that point. And I'm just using simple terms. But and obviously you get what I'm talking about, Commander. However, in the 24th century, they have extended their Wi-Fi that far because the collective was clearly intact at the time that the first Borg cube attacked Earth.
But as we know, Wi-Fi speeds do get diminishing returns the further out you go.
Right, but we're assuming that they're using 802.11b when obviously they're using something far superior to that. Anyway, man, we're getting nerdy today. So I don't think the range thing is really an issue as much as because it just depends on whether the Borg have been there before and they basically want that area covered.
That is this week's Trekyards done and dusted. Next week we've got another great part.
Yes, the continuation next week. Tune in.
So 7 days and just click on that link. So we'll see you then.
See you then, guys.